It's a lost city that was written down in legend for 1,500 years before it was rediscovered.
But no one has found the Bible's most evil lost cities.
It's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland
of Sodom and Gomorrah. At least not yet.
Look at this stuff. It's bizarre. It's like a hailstorm or something. It says they were wiped off the face of the earth.
But sealed for ages under the earth, new discoveries are finally cracking the mystery.
This place is just nuts. Bone just all over the place. Bone fragments everywhere.
What really happened to Sodom and Gomorrah?
I'm Jeff Rose. I'm an archaeologist and an anthropologist, and I'm on a hunt for two of the most famous lost cities in the world, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Behind every legend, there's a compelling true story. My mission is to discover the evidence that brings this truth to life. You can call me the Legend Hunter.
I'm here at the Dead Sea, one of the lowest points on Earth, looking for two of the world's most famous lost cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, which, according to the Bible, were destroyed by the wrath of God somewhere along these shores.
It's one of the Old Testament's most famous and frightening stories. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah are punished by God for their sinful ways.
God rains fire and brimstone down from the heavens and wipes the cities of the plain off the map.
Some scholars believe that Sodom and Gomorrah were built near the Dead Sea during the Bronze Age, around 2100 BC, 4,000 years ago. There are several Bronze Age sites in this region that are the most likely contenders. My mission is to find these cities and figure out what actually destroyed them.
So here's how I'm going to find those lost cities. I'm going to go to Bronze Age sites in an area called the Land of the Plain, which is near the Dead Sea on the Jordan side. I'm going to look at Bronze Age sites because it has to be from a time when there was still water in this area and people could live there. And I need to find signs of some kind of natural disaster that left destruction across the entire site.
I hiked to the top of Mount Nebo to get the lay of the land. This is the same peak Moses climbed in the Bible. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, and the Lord showed him all the land.
So this is it. This is the setting of the legend of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's the land of the plain. There's the mountains where Abraham watched the fires burning from Hebron. There's the Dead Sea itself. I'm standing in one of the most geologically active places in the world.
The Bible tells us Sodom and Gomorrah were located near the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea lies directly over the Jordan Rift, formed millions of years ago. It's one of the most earthquake-prone places on Earth, and it's the lowest place on Earth. So was it an earthquake that brought down Sodom and Gomorrah? A terrible drought? A cataclysmic flood? A cosmic event like a meteor strike? Or did the ground actually open up and swallow these cities completely? There's a reason they call these disasters biblical. So which one was it? I want to find out.
All right, gather around the campfire, folks. Let me tell you the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. The story starts with Abraham and his nephew Lot.
Abraham settles to the west of the Dead Sea and Lot to the east in the land of the plain.
Over time, this area becomes known for their depravity and for mostly their inhospitality. And so God decides, I need to test these people because this isn't good. And if they don't pass the test, I'm going to wipe them out. So he sends two angels down, and they come to the city of Sodom, and they stay in the house of Lot. That evening, all the townspeople come banging on the door of Lot's house, and they say, send those two new strangers out so that we may know them, in the biblical sense. And Lot knows that the survival of his people depends on if they're going to be hospitable or not. So he does what any good host would do, and he says, you can't have these two men, these two angels, but you can have my daughters. And the angels strike the townspeople blind, and they say, that's it, it's just a Lot, you have to flee. You and your wife, gather up your family, gather up your belongings, and get out of town because it's about to get real. So Lot takes his family and they flee the town, and just as they get out, fire rains down on the city, sulfur and brimstone. But as they're fleeing, his wife does what she's told not to do. She looks behind, and as she looks back, she's turned into a pillar of salt. Ever since this passage in the Bible is written down, people are wondering, are there really a Sodom and Gomorrah? Can we find them? I think we can. The nice thing about the Sodom and Gomorrah story is it's very specific about the geography.
According to the Bible, Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. I'm heading to explore a cave near Zoar that could be the actual place where Lot and his daughters hid. Jordanian archaeologist Mohammed Najjar is an expert on Bronze Age sites.
I can't imagine having to do this walk. If I was Lot's family,
everything has to be
brought up. Wow, that is a spectacular view.
This is the land or the plain, yes.
Yeah, it's certainly well watered. It fits the geographic description in the story because at the end of the story, Lot and his family flee to the cave and they watch the fires burning from there. Now, what about this cave?
Yeah, let's go and see it. This is the oldest part of the whole site here.
This is the infamous Lot's Cave.
Yeah, yes, supposedly.
Yes.
At least people 2,000 years ago believed that this is Lot's Cave.
In fact, artifacts have been found here from Lot's time period about 4,000 years ago, the Bronze Age. I can imagine Lot and his daughters huddled in this dark cave, the last survivors of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Is this the only cave near biblical Zoar?
Yeah,
the only one they could
this is
survive
all
in?
you need. You need the shelter, you need the water, and you need some fields around you anyway. And it is a very safe place here.
So let's go have a look at some of the other stuff outside.
Yes.
Water is key to survival in any harsh climate like this. If I can find evidence of a water source on the side of this dry mountain, then I'll feel more confident that Lot could have settled here. And if so, then historical Sodom and Gomorrah should be nearby.
Look at this. This is all plaster. This is a little irrigation channel. So these guys really were good at manipulating water. This is really an ingenious way of directing the water down to their cisterns.
Although this reservoir was built after the Bronze Age, it shows me just how much water was once coming out of the side of this mountain. Even if water was scarce on the plain, it would have still been flowing up here.
So the question is this Lot's cave? Well, it's somebody's cave, somebody in the Bronze Age. There's a water source here, and we're right near biblical Zoar. So it certainly fits the description of the myth. And whether the guy was named Lot and whether he was fleeing a destroyed city, who knows? But everything else seems to fit.
The geography makes sense, but I need to take a closer look at how destruction affects an ancient city. I'm going to Petra, a lost city that survived a cataclysmic event, to look at the ruins and to find parallels to our story. Once the glittering capital of the Nabatean Empire, even as an ancient ruin today, Petra is considered one of the new 7 wonders of the world.
The people that built Petra were called the Nabateans. And they started building it around 9 BC. This was their capital. This was the gem of their kingdom.
In fact, the word Petra means rock.
I stopped by Petra because it's a classic example of a lost city that was written down in legend for 1,500 years before it was rediscovered.
You have to pass through a long, narrow gorge called the Sea just to get to the entrance of the main city. Its location inside this vast canyon with few access points provided the Nabateans with solid protection and an impressive entrance for visitors.
Petra. This incredible building behind me is called the Treasury, but it's not a treasury at all. It's actually a temple.
It took 20 years to carve from the rock.
It was built to wow the desert traders when they came through this mile-long corridor to get into the city. And even to this day, it has that effect. Your jaw just hits the ground when you see it. The amazing thing about Petra isn't just that the whole city's carved into the rock, but it's the rock itself. I mean, look at these swirling layers of red and blue. It's just unbelievable. Look at this. This is all an old aqueduct here that directs water into the city. And one thing the Nabateans were really good at was controlling water. The legends we have of Petra tell of a very specific kind of destruction by earthquake. So I'm here to see if I can see that earthquake damage and actually have physical evidence of why it was lost.
These are the signs of destruction I need to identify to find my lost cities. I'm meeting Ahmed, a Petra historian.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed.
Hi, Jeff.
Nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you too.
Let's see some of the earthquake damage.
Yeah.
Ahmed and I hike up to a spot where we can see the big picture of the city and what destruction looks like on a grand scale.
Wow. So then this is the extent of the site where people were actually living?
Yeah. Down there you can see remains of their houses, the foundation of their buildings, which were destroyed by earthquakes.
Ahmed takes me to a place where I can see earthquake damage up close.
So then this is the royal tomb.
This is one of the royal tombs.
One of them. Oh yeah, you said there were 13 kings.
Yeah. Look at the crack up there, the ceiling.
Yeah, this one.
Those cracks, because of the earthquakes, hit
How do we know
Petra.
that's earthquake and not some sort of other geological process?
Yeah, this is sandstone.
So it would take an earthquake to crack sandstone, like in that way.
It's not just the Old Testament that tells the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Quran describes the destruction quite vividly. We turn the cities upside down and rain down on them brimstones, hard as baked clay. Behold.
The city is lifted up and
thrown back down to the ground. You know, we believe that the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah still now they are underwater of the Dead Sea.
Huh. We need some scuba gear.
For sure.
Thank you so much. You're awesome.
You're welcome. Bye.
Ahmed and others believe Sodom and Gomorrah lie under the Dead Sea. Even though diving expeditions have documented unusual formations, no actual evidence of a lost city has been found. The Dead Sea is extremely deep, hazardous for divers. The salt is so corrosive that it would probably destroy any evidence of a lost city. As I leave Petra, I realize the size of the challenge ahead of me.
Petra was completely leveled to the ground by those earthquakes, but it was bound to be found sooner or later because it was made of stone. Sodom and Gomorrah are an entirely different matter. They're Bronze Age cities made of mud brick. Mud brick doesn't preserve, and in the Bible, it says they were wiped off the face of the earth. It's going to be much harder to find them.
Sodom and Gomorrah were punished in part for their lack of hospitality to strangers. As the Bible tells us, Sodom's sins were pride, gluttony, and laziness, while the poor and needy suffered outside her door. God was pretty disappointed. As I search for the lost cities, I need to understand how hospitality works in this part of the world.
So while the rest of Petra was abandoned and lost to the west, the Bedouin here still knew about it. In fact, where we're going tonight is a place called Little Petra, which is where they've been coming and going for a couple thousand years since the city was abandoned.
This Bedouin camp is off the grid. The road is dark and deserted, but if I can find my way, it'll be worth it. The Bedouin, nomads of the desert, have guarded the secret of Petra for centuries. Maybe they're hiding a clue about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Assalamu alaikum.
You're welcome, my friend. Fadal.
Shukran.
I'm having dinner with Haider al-Musaid and his family, who have lived around Petra for centuries. Haider and his family embody the sacred Bedouin code of hospitality that goes all the way back to biblical times.
Ah, shukran.
Yes, this is my wife.
Assalamu alaikum.
And Khalid
Salam Khalid.
can stay over there.
The meal's been cooking all day in an underground oven called a zarb. It's basically the Bedouin version of a slow cooker.
That's a lot of meat in front of me here. Mahabad.
My bad.
Okay, we're gonna eat together.
And the lavish meal is served. Its centerpiece, piles of succulent lamb and chicken.
So I'm here in Jordan to investigate lost cities. Petra was lost for 1,500 years. You guys, Bedouin, knew it was here the whole time.
yes.
How important is hospitality in the Bedouin culture?
هذه عادات آبائنا وأجدادنا حسن الضيافة والكرم والطيب يلا حي الضيوف.
So Haider was just saying to me that we've learned hospitality from our ancestors, and it's absolutely essential when a guest shows up at your door, you have to feed them, you have to attend to their needs, which is really just like that story of Sodom and Gomorrah. As the book of Genesis describes, the two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Except in Sodom and Gomorrah, they didn't take care of them. They were inhospitable, and that was the crime. So maybe you could just tell me a little bit about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, about the people of Lot in the Quran. Haider's version of the story comes from the oral tradition of his ancestors. It describes these towns as being turned upside down, just like in the Bible and the Quran. If Petra could be lost and rediscovered and have these folk tales about it and all this legends in the Quran, maybe Sodom really existed too. Haidar tells me that there were settlements around the Dead Sea, near where the story places the prophet Lot. He believes Sodom and Gomorrah can be rediscovered. And like others, he thinks Sodom and Gomorrah are near the Dead Sea. But where? I'm turning to one of the oldest maps in the world for clues. Recently, archaeologists have said that these two cities are Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm on my way now to a place called Madaba to look at a mosaic, which may be a treasure map to help me find Sodom. The mosaic map is located inside St. George's Orthodox Church. It's one of the oldest maps of the biblical world from the 6th century AD. So here it is, the famous Madaba map. Now just to orient you, this is north, this is south, this is east, and that's west. So where I'm standing here is in Jordan, and this is the Jordan River, so on this other side is the Holy Land. There's two areas that I'm really interested in. The first is up here, which is the north side of the Dead Sea, and then the other one is over here, which is the south side of the Dead Sea. And those are the two contenders for the cities of the plain. Zoar is in the south. I think that area is promising because its location and description match the story. So if Lot was in the cave I explored, Sodom would have to be nearby. The other location is to the north, and that's caught my interest because the map shows two cities close together. These two cities are the million-dollar question because we don't know the names of the cities. We don't know which ones they are. They're half cut off. Some scholars suggest these two cities are Sodom and Gomorrah, and one of them is in the exact spot where archaeologists discovered an ancient site. So now I'm off to Tel el-Hammam, which some people think may correlate with that unknown city on the Madaba map. And the excavator of the site thinks that this may actually be Sodom. Archaeologist Stephen Collins believes Tel el-Hammam was wiped out by a cosmic event called an airburst, a comet of flaming space debris. Collins has been digging here since 2005. He's convinced he's found Sodom, but I need to see the evidence first. So there's Tel el-Hammam, that beige lump rising off the plain, and then way in back is the Dead Sea itself. So it certainly fits the biblical description of the well-watered plain of the Jordan. So let's go down to the site and have a look. It is blistering hot right now, and the humidity is probably 100%, so I'm constantly soaked. I'm meeting up with Adib Abu Shmais, a Jordanian archaeologist who excavates here with Stephen Collins.
Welcome.
Thank you. So in terms of what we're looking at here, which area of the site are we in now?
We are in the site here, we called it the gate.
The gate is from the Iron Age, but they're also finding evidence of massive Bronze Age walls here. So the city wall would have been from here all the way out to here, almost 10 feet. To build something like this, to build this kind of a fortification, you need strong centralized authority. You need specialized builders. These are not small villages or pastoral people coming and settling down in tents. This is a massive city-state. So let's go find out if it's Sodom, though. Not only is it built on a high fertile plain with access to water, it's heavily fortified with a gate. Another clue from the biblical story. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them.
Just come down into here. This is the kind of profile an archaeologist dreams about. This is incredible. So this is the base of the wall, the foundation.
Yeah.
And then there's some little bit of mud brick preserved, and these would have been
above it.
huge mud brick walls.
That's it.
Okay.
Remember that Sodom and Gomorrah were made of mud brick. I'm feeling good about the age and location of the site, but we have to check another major box. We need to find evidence that the site was destroyed completely by a massive fire event. So there should be an ancient burn layer throughout the site.
Now, I'm seeing a lower burning level over here in this section. Let's go have a look at that.
It's the right time frame for the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, but the burnt layer so far is limited to this area. I can't say this is the fire and brimstone written in the Bible. Although some scholars have suggested that these destruction layers were caused by a meteor shower, it could also have been a structure fire.
So this black line here is the destruction of biblical Sodom, supposedly. But that doesn't really make sense in my mind, because why would there be people coming back in the Iron Age and the Classical period? The city is described as being turned upside down, so it's not really fitting the description all that well. So I think I need to take this investigation in a different direction.
Regardless, Tel el-Hammam was an extraordinary ancient city, occupied on and off during ancient times. The team will continue to dig for further evidence to prove this is Sodom. I'm beginning to form my own ideas about other possibilities. I keep thinking about the Dead Sea. The Quran tells us the cities are right on the high road from Mecca to Syria, the place where the Dead Sea is now. Even if Sodom and Gomorrah were once located along these shores and fell into the Dead Sea because of some natural disaster, it's unlikely any evidence would have survived 4,000 years. Still, the Dead Sea in this harsh climate must be central to our story.
So when you see those salt formations way above the Dead Sea, you really get a sense of how much fluctuation there is in the rainfall around here.
If there was a drought significant enough to wipe the population out, that would add yet another natural disaster to my list of possible endings for Sodom and Gomorrah.
The thing that I find so fascinating about this landscape in Jordan and also throughout all of Arabia is that it wasn't always deserts. 4,000 years ago, if we looked out, you'd see like green and you'd see rivers and lakes, and it was a really lush, fertile place. Only since that event, 2100 BC, 4,000 years ago, did it become this desert that we know today.
Something happened here right around the time of Sodom and Gomorrah that changed the climate, and I want to know what that was.
To answer that question, I need to go to the other side of the Dead Sea, to Israel, where there's some important geological clues. I'm just here outside Sorek Cave in Israel, south of Jerusalem in the hills. The cave was found completely by accident about 40, 50 years ago. They were quarrying the local rock. Somebody was about to drop dynamite into a hole until they realized the entire ground underneath was hollow. And that's where they found the cave. Mira, it is so nice to meet you.
Miriam Bar Matthews is a geologist who's been studying this cave for years.
Oh my God. This is incredible.
Yeah?
Yeah, this is, I've seen a few caves, but this is out of this world. It is surreal. Like a subterranean fantasy land.
Yeah, it's a fantasy land.
This 4-million-year-old cave is a hidden repository of climate history. By analyzing the stalactites and stalagmites in the cave, Mira can pinpoint rainfall levels from different time periods.
Now, this had been a stalactite hanging from the top of the
This was a
ceiling.
stalagmite.
Now, how old is this one?
This started to grow about 25,000 years ago until present.
So we have a
Almost until present.
complete sequence
We
of
have
the
a
last
complete
25,000
sequence.
years.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is an example that we actually sliced like this.
And each of these rings can be dated, so we can know precisely when
Yeah.
each of these rings formed.
Yeah. And we see that the chemistry tell us that something really major happened about 4,200 years ago.
A cross-section of this stalagmite indicates a severe drought around the same time Sodom and Gomorrah fell.
This cave is spectacular. It's this complete sealed record of climate change. So by about 5,000, this is probably when our Sodom and Gomorrah cities were being founded, it's very wet. And then 4,200 years ago, it goes dry. They were saying that this lasted for about 600 years and would have devastated all the civilizations in this region.
The Bible tells us Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed overnight. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. If a long drought drove people away, it would have taken decades. Hardly the swift punishment of a vengeful God.
What I've seen at Sorek is this was one of those green periods when it was lush and fertile, and that people of the plain were living in a really wet environment. And it was only at 2100 BC that the going got tough and things began to dry out, and those cities were wiped out. The reason I'm floating here like this is because this is the most saline body of water in the world. 1/3 of it is salt.
The Dead Sea is completely landlocked, so as water evaporates, it gets saltier.
The last 35 years, the sea levels dropped at least 30 meters.
The more salt, the easier it is to float.
So my crew and I have devised a little experiment. We're going to see how much weight it takes to sink me. So here, rock number 1, nothing. Rock number 2. Nope, almost, but not quite. This is it, rock number 3. This is what it takes to sink me.
If it took all this to sink me, imagine the cataclysmic event necessary to sink a city. The drought, about 4,000 years ago, left the Dead Sea at dangerously low levels, just like today. Nizar Abu Jaber is a geologist who believes there's a link here to solving the mystery of Sodom and Gomorrah. Nizar shows me what happens when water levels drop here.
Look at these salts.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely salt.
You're on a low sodium diet.
Yeah, exactly. That was my sodium for the day. Look at this stuff. It's bizarre. It's like a hailstorm or something. Just these little round balls of salt. Weird.
So here we can see actually where the salt is made. And you can see the cloudiness in some places in the water.
And then as it gets lower and lower, it dries out.
It gets those crusts that you have there. So as level falls and it becomes more salty.
You're just walking across this. It really reminds me of that story of Sodom and Gomorrah when the landscape is destroyed and wiped out. It just feels like that. It's this crackling, dead surface.
I can see why Lot's wife turns to a pillar of salt in the story. It seems like everything around here turns to salt.
And all of this is linked to rainfall. So the more rainfall, the higher the Dead Sea. The less rainfall, the lower the Dead Sea.
But what does all this have to do with Sodom and Gomorrah? It turns out the biggest clue of all is right beneath our feet.
So you see here now we're in the middle of this collapse.
So it's a kind of sinkhole.
Yeah.
As the Dead Sea recedes, sinkholes appear on the shore. They form quickly and can open up without warning, with the potential to swallow anything above them.
Oh, look at it. This is just part of the sinkhole opening up here.
Right, exactly.
We're essentially walking on a landscape of Swiss cheese.
Right.
20 years ago, this giant sinkhole swallowed up an entire cement factory. And right now, we're looking at what's left of it.
It's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's like a movie set, it really is.
Yes, and you can see the tilted buildings, everything is just kind of messed up and uneven anymore.
This place is unbelievable. This factory was just swallowed up by these sinkholes, so that all you get now are just patches of rubble and concrete. So can I climb down in there?
No, I don't think that's a good idea. You can see that these can collapse at any minute, so they're actually people are warned to stay away from them.
So we should probably back up.
The other day, a 20-meter tree fell into a hole, suddenly.
God, you really do have to be careful. This whole landscape is falling apart. We just had an incident the other day with the crew where one of the goats got trapped in one of these crevices and somebody had to go and rescue it.
Yes. Yeah.
Go! These are incredible. These 10 feet, 20 feet, just fissures in the earth, just opening up. Imagine if something happened like this 4,000 years ago, what people would have thought.
They might as well have believed that God was punishing them.
So do you think then, when we have the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah,
Right.
and in the Quran it even says, turned upside down.
Right.
I mean, do you think it could have been something like this, with these sinkholes just opening up beneath a city?
Well, we see it in front of us. So this large facility that was totally destroyed by the geological activity in this place, sure.
We know that sinkholes are capable of wreaking havoc on a biblical scale, and sinkholes are often triggered by earthquakes and other seismic activity. And here we are now, in the land of biblical cataclysms.
I mean, yeah, this could be, if you take away the concrete, this could be Sodom and Gomorrah.
But Sodom and Gomorrah would have been mud brick.
Yeah.
And in that case, all of it would have been disintegrated and gone by now.
We would have no trace of the cities left.
It would only take a few decades and you wouldn't see anything.
Destroyed completely. Is this the answer?
Now, what about the fire and the brimstone? What's the deal? What is brimstone?
I have no idea. I would guess it might be bitumen. And the bitumen, of course, was being extracted here and sold to the Egyptians, who used it to make their mummies.
I need to find out more about bitumen, and Nizar knows just the spot.
So this is bitumen.
Yeah, here it is.
So this is a whole seam of bitumen in the rock.
Right. Actually sniff it.
Yeah, it smells like tar.
I want to do a little experiment to find out whether it could have caused the infamous fires of Sodom.
Oh, that's a nice chunk that came off. I can see
boiling.
I can see it melting, but not really catching fire.
Right.
Can't see. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
My test demonstrates that all the elements of the story in the Bible are right here, but I'm still not sure what the final catalyst was. There's one last site to investigate just up the road. Like Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible, Baba Dra was abandoned. The whole land will be a burning waste of salt and sulfur. Nothing planted, nothing sprouting, no vegetation growing on it. Could the cities be one and the same? I'm reconnecting with Muhammad Najjar. Our meeting place is Karak Castle, a medieval stronghold built by the Crusaders.
You picked a really nice spot for this.
Yeah, it is actually. It is
Stunning. So we're looking west, more or less?
Yeah, we are looking northwest.
If it were clear, the Dead Sea is just beyond those hills.
Unfortunately, it's very hazy, but in clear weather, you could see part of the Jordan Valley.
Wow. No wonder the Crusaders set their castle up here.
Muhammad leads me to one last place. He's taking me to Baba Dra because it's considered by many to be the most likely candidate for Sodom. We start at the cemetery where the site was first discovered.
And as I understand it, it's a big graveyard.
It is a huge one.
What are all these holes?
These holes are tombs.
How many do you think there are?
They've calculated about 10,000 tombs or more.
10,000 tombs. I'm going to go check it out.
Like,
I'll report back. So you see all these round circular holes all over the place. You can tell these aren't the graves. These are dug by looters.
It's upsetting to see the amount of grave robbing here.
You know they're not dug by archaeologists because we dig in straight lines and squares. Yeah, I mean, here, look. Pottery, pottery. Look at this. This is just a whole field of pottery.
And sure enough, the age of the pottery indicates that the place was abandoned around 2100 BC, the time when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed.
This is interesting. I'm not sure what this is, but it's some huge capstone or... Nature didn't put this here. Ah, wait a minute. Here's something. Okay. It's cool. I've never seen a Bronze Age tomb before, but this is one of them. Let's see what's down here. It's a little eerie. So now I know what that stone is I just saw right there. That's one of these. And then a bunch of individuals would have been buried inside of this. I mean, it's amazing how well constructed these are, and this is really impressive.
So is this hauntingly beautiful place the real Sodom? To be sure, I'm heading to the main town site.
So where are we here on the site?
the city is to our left, right there.
This used to be a thriving city, protected by walls nearly 20 feet thick.
Massive fortification walls.
It is. You can imagine the huge investment they put in building this town.
They worked with the same materials used to build Sodom and Gomorrah.
This is mud brick.
Okay.
Muhammad tells me the most important clue.
3500 BCE, the inhabitants of Bab al-Dra were nomads. Later on, they started to have settlement here.
It's interesting because it kind of fits with the Sodom and Gomorrah story, how when they talk about when they settled the cities of the plain.
At about 2900 BCE, people started to build city walls, these fortifications.
So let's see. Bab al-Dra was a big settlement for its time, just like Sodom. The building materials are right, and so is the time period. But to be sure it really is Sodom, I need evidence of a natural disaster akin to the wrath of God in the Bible.
And what about destruction? Because that's really what I'm after here.
Is this massive archaeological site Sodom?
If we talk about the fortification wall collapsing, yes, of course, we have evidence of destruction here.
No burning layers or anything that, where we find ash or charcoal across the entire site.
The excavators reported some ash layers in this area, but it's very difficult to explain, the cause of these ash layers.
I'm going to check out the ash layer to see if it's consistent with the fiery destruction in the Bible.
Did you bring that brush?
Yes, I did.
Can I see for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, there's some charcoal in the section. So there is some burning, but if you're going to make any argument to link this site with Sodom or a city that was destroyed by fire, we'd have to find this everywhere. Come on over here. So we have another section that's exposed, and here, just to give it a little brush, you don't see any of that. So this is just a meter away, or 4 feet away, and there is no charcoal on the same level. So I think we can immediately disprove fire brimstone did not destroy this place.
It wasn't wiped out overnight with fire and brimstone, but over time by a massive drought. But where's the sign of a sudden catastrophe here? That leaves me without a solid location for Sodom and Gomorrah. Or does it? I keep thinking about the Dead Sea and those sinkholes. I want to go back and take another look.
This place is unbelievable. This factory was just swallowed up by these sinkholes, so that all you get now are just patches of rubble and concrete.
I'm starting to think that it's the sinkholes that killed Sodom and Gomorrah. My search for the lost cities of Sodom and Gomorrah has taken me across Jordan, from crumbling ruins to the barren coast of the Dead Sea. And that's where I find the most likely suspect: sinkholes. A groundbreaking new theory I hadn't even considered when I started this journey.
It's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's like a movie set, it really is. We would have no trace whatsoever.
Sinkholes form here during times of drought, and there was a severe dry period at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah's demise.
So this area behind me here with all the sinkholes is an actively eroding area where new sinkholes are forming every day. So I'm dying to have a closer look, but I got to be very careful because they could open up at any time. It's not the safest place in the world. In fact, the geologist I talked to when he came here said he sunk down to his waist immediately. I keep thinking of that line where it says, after Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, the land itself was destroyed. And I look around here and it really seems to fit that description. I just want to make sure that this is stable before walking across it, because look at these holes there.
Could sinkholes like these, produced by a long period of drought, have destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, leaving no trace of the two lost cities?
I just heard some hollow sounds while I was walking across this edge of the sinkhole, so I think we've gone far enough. Time to pack up and go.
I now believe the southern coast of the Dead Sea is the setting for Sodom and Gomorrah. Literally every day there's seismic activity, which could trigger a sinkhole.
Just imagine, you're living in this city and you wake up one morning and the whole thing gets sucked into the ground. A huge cloud of smoke comes billowing up with the dust that's kicked up from this event. Abraham could see it all the way over there from the mountains of Hebron. Lot could see it from his cave near Zoar. This lines up the geography perfectly. This, to me, is the simplest, most elegant solution to the mystery of Sodom and Gomorrah.